Good Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good week, good day, good afternoon. When you look at it, Browns a day off out in Berea, getting ready for that first preseason game of the entire NFL, the Hall of Fame game, tomorrow night in Canton. Former Brown Jason McCourty was on Good Morning Football, NFL Network today, talking about who he thinks the dark horse for the top offense in the NFL is.
I'm going with another team whose quarterback needs to step up and get back to old form. I'm going with the Cleveland Browns.
I like it.
You look at Deshaun Watson, the last year where we saw him play a full year for the Houston Texans, 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. And we can get some semblance of that version of Deshaun Watson with Nick Chubb, a top 5 running back in the NFL. Amari Cooper's there, get him getting off the ball. And then the guy they brought in, Elijah Moore, has looked good in training camp. Saw a one-on-one rep with him and Denzel Ward, made an amazing catch. What if these guys can take off? No one's expecting them to be a top-ranked offense in the NFL next year. I think they can be a dark horse team. Now, you look up and they're like, my goodness, the Cleveland Browns are a powerhouse on offense. So let's see what they can put together this season.
With that, let's welcome in Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Jack, I can understand that line of thinking.
No, if you're looking at it on paper, there's no reason Deshaun Watson can't be a top 8 quarterback. We've got the number 1 running back in the NFL. Top 8 tight end in David Njoku. Got a top 4, top 5 offensive line, depending on who you want to listen to. And then the wide receiver room could easily be top 8. And if every asset of the entire offense is top 8 at worst, that's going to put you in and around 1, 2, 3 in terms of best offenses in the NFL. So scheme's been really good. Kevin Stefanski's done some great work. They're going to lean on the pass, and they could go as far as they want this year.
Now, I know you've done an early 53-man roster prediction. Let's take a look at some of the things. We'll start on the offense. So we'll break this up, offense and defense. Watson, Dobbs, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the 3 quarterbacks, you think. Running backs, this one's kind of interesting. So we're going to go Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, then either Felton or a free agent. And you say possibly Ezekiel Elliott, potentially. All right. Wide receivers, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You've got Cooper, Peoples-Jones, Moore, Bell, Goodwin, Cedric Tillman. Now, Goodwin, we're not sure. You know, anytime you hear blood clots, lungs, and legs, that's always concerning. Hopefully he gets back. You have Darden potentially there as well. The offense, or the tight ends. Tight ends, you know you got Njoku, you know there's Akins. It'll be interesting to see. Harrison Bryant restructured his contract. Does somebody offer them something for him in camp? Then the offensive line is another one. Wills, Conklin, Hudson, DeJuan Jones. Tackles, you got the guards. Batonio Teller, Dunn. Then Forbes, somebody that's off the roster. And then centers. Again, there's some tough decisions. You got Ethan Posick, you got Whippler, and then that means Nick Harris doesn't make it. So this roster's been upgraded. I think the guys we're leaving off are going to make somebody's 53-man roster.
Yeah, it's incredible how much has shifted. I remember days when we talk about, do we know who the starting 11 on offense are? Whereas we're now more or less at the point where we can write sort of 22 of the 25 in pen and go, they're all locked in. Talk about a 3rd running back, a 4th guard. That's really about it. And that puts us in a really strong position because they're using training camp more to get ready for week 1 rather than it's, let's work out who the best people are. It is such a talented roster across the board, and I think that puts them in a really good spot. I would happily go out and spend a little bit. I don't want to spend too much, but bring in another running back just to be safe because Ford might have some promise, but the issue is going to be what happens if Chubb misses the first 4 weeks of the season. I don't want to be sat there where Fournette, Zeke, everyone else is gone and we're relying on Jerome Ford and maybe Marlon Mack or somebody in that ilk to step in off free agency. I think he's already signed with somebody else, but someone who isn't very good. Whereas I'd rather have someone, if spend $2.5 million, bring Zeke in. just gives you that level of insurance.
All right, so let's go and look at the defensive side of the ball. Again, we're talking with Jack Duffin, Orange and Brown Report, and this is his 53-man roster projection, early one. So the defensive backs are loaded. I mean, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, A.J. Green. Ford is a special teams guy. Cam Mitchell, a draft pick that can play in the slot. You look at the safeties, again, huge upgrade. Thornhill, Delpit, McLeod, and you've got the free agent Hickman kind of securing that fourth safety spot. Linebackers, Walker, Owusu-Koramoah, Taki, Adams again, a special team guy. Kunasik, a special teams guy. Tony Fields is another one. So Jacob Phillips, you have not making the final 53. Edge rushers, again, huge upgrade. Garrett Smith, Okunrankwo, Wright, a young guy, and then the draft pick, Isaiah McGuire. Tackles, you look at them, Tomlinson, Elliott, Ika, and Hurst. And you have some of those ends that can kick in. So that the only thing that's concerning there is the tackles. You know, how concerned are you? And we'll talk a little bit about some guys that might fix that. Are you concerned about the depth at tackle?
Yeah, I'd love to add another defensive tackle, because if you look across this entire roster, pretty much defensive tackle is the only spot you could sign somebody and they would either start or be the first backup. Pretty much everywhere else you look, there is no one left in free agency that's going to make us better. So that's the spot I would definitely go out and add someone. I know they brought in Shelby Harris, Matt Ioannidis is out there, Ndamukong Suh. I would just go out and get one of those guys, and it makes me feel a lot more confident with where they are.
So you mentioned Harris, and you tweeted this out. We know Harris has been in to work out and visit with the Browns. He also went to the Broncos earlier in the week and lives in Denver and has played there. But again, you know, who has any idea what type of contract he's looking for? You mentioned the $8 million in 2022. I'm guessing they don't want to go that high, and I'm guessing if somebody was willing to go that high, he'd probably be in camp now.
Yeah, I think you're probably looking somewhere in that $3 to $5 million range, maybe with some incentives in there. But then sometimes you get really late on in camp. Some of these guys sign for like 2.5 because they feel like there's nowhere left to sign and will just sign somewhere. So it can be a waiting game, and there are several names out there still. Maybe if there was only one, they'd feel a bit more pressure to go and do something. Whereas they're almost in a nice spot at the moment where they can assess all the options while giving Maurice Hurst, some other guys, the opportunity to step up. But no, I think they'll definitely get someone done. And after that's there, the roster is absolutely stacked. And it just comes down to, can Deshaun Watson play? If Deshaun Watson plays like a top 8 quarterback, the rest of the roster is that talented. It will be a breeze this season. And then it's a whole different ballgame once you get to the playoffs, but you get to the playoffs.
When you look at it, is Harris a guy that you think fits well? Suh has a little bit of history with Jim Schwartz. Of the guys that are out there, and you mentioned Ioannidis, of the guys that are out there, who do you think fits next to Dalvin Tomlinson, or somebody that does what the Browns need from a D tackle?
I think all three of them are great, and it doesn't really bother me which of them. Matt Ioannidis, to me, is by far the most talented of the group. I think Shelby Harris is probably next up I would take. Has really good pressure numbers, but then also provides well in the run game. And I think the advantage of having two really good ones is you almost being able to rotate with. Tomlinson tends to play about 55% of snaps, which is fine when he's out there. But what happens when he's not? Are we relying on Ika and Jordan Elliott, or Ika and Hurst? Having somebody else, even if it's one where you go, we'll have Tomlinson on the field or we'll have Shelby Harris, unless it's a massive, important snap, just then rotate one of them out there at a time, and you just want to have that high level of quality across the defensive line.
All right, before we go to break, you wrote an article for the Orange and Brown Report, posted, I think, today. And it's the most overhyped Browns players. Number 3, you go with Dalvin Tomlinson. Number 2, Elijah Moore. And number 1, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Take us through that and how you arrived at those.
Yeah, so it's more or less looking at the narrative around particular players, and sort of comparing that to what I think was the actual outcome. And lots of people, when we signed Dalvin Tomlinson, said, hey, we've fixed the defensive tackle room, everything's fine. And it was more pointing to the fact that he plays about 55% of snaps. So that might be great for those 55. What's going to happen to the 45% of snaps when he's not out there? So it was more or less making the point, you need to add another person. One defensive tackle doesn't fix it. You've got Myles Garrett, an edge, they can play 75% of snaps. You don't get that from a defensive tackle. Elijah Moore, there's lots of talk, hey, he's going to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver. And it's like, that's not really realistic. There's tends to be about 20 to 25,000-yard wide receivers across the entire NFL. So if you're looking at what you can expect from a wide receiver too, provided, because Amari Cooper you'd expect to get the 1,000 yards, probably looking around 600 yards for Elijah Moore. So it can still be really beneficial for the Browns. But the talk that, oh, he's going to be a 1,000-yard wide receiver, I don't see it. Unless there's obviously an injury, something like that. And then JOK, there's the hype around, he's up there with like the best linebackers in the league. Not like right in the top 2 or 3, but he's in that sort of top 8 range. And I just don't see that based on, hey, he had a really nice rookie year, but last year was dire. As soon as Anthony Walker was off the field for the first 2 games, he had like 2 above average games through the whole of the rest of the season post week 2. So that's not good enough. He doesn't tend to progress. And that is going to be a really important year for him, year 3, because he's either got to step up or he's probably looking on elsewhere. And the Browns never tend to invest in linebacker. And that's the same for Schwartz defenses. If we go back to the Eagles, always cheap at the linebacker position because the mentality is spend more at defensive tackles, spend more at edge, go cheaper at linebacker. And that probably means he's got 2 years left in Cleveland and he's gone. So I think the fan and media opinion of JOK is a lot higher than what he actually delivers on the field.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report now. Going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, what he has seen from the red zone offense early in camp. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Alex Van Pelt, Browns offensive coordinator, was asked yesterday. There's an opinion going around. The reports are coming out that the defense has had the better of it against the offense so far in those red zone drills.
Absolutely. No, and I told the guys this morning, it's hard. It's hard down there. You get inside that 5-yard line, that 8-yard line, and it's a pass drill. It's skeleton. The situations, we had 4-point plays the other day. We're not going to hand the ball off from the 8 to Nick Chubb and let him run in. So it is hard. The space is smaller. The open receivers aren't as open. There's contested catches. There's high balls in the back of the end zone, and it's a good challenge for us. We are going to continue to, get good at what we do exactly. And then when they play great coverage, it's hard to win down there in tight spaces. But I told the guys this morning, again, we're not game planning against our defense. We're not trying to change plays to win the drill. We're going to run our plays and get really good at those. And then remember, hey, we have running backs. We have things we're going to do down in there, not just drop back and throw the ball every time.
Jack, the thing that's been impressive is there's a lot of competition, even in the first week of practice. Those red zone drills, and they're hugely important because that's gonna be what separates the elite from the okay offenses. How well you can do in the red zone.
Yeah, I think it's one that I'm not too worried. If we get to the stage where we're playing preseason games and we're seeing it just completely falter, I'd be more worried. But when you're saying, hey, it's obvious we're going to pass the ball, the other side, no, every aspect of our playbook, you are going to be limited with what you achieve. And it's never going to be the same way when you're playing in a real game. You're going to have so many different options and different looks and everything you can throw at the team. Whereas the defense knows what you're going to do. You might make a play in the huddle, and they're going to hear exactly what that is and go, "Oh yeah, we know what that is," and play for it. So I think that's one where I take this stuff with a pinch of salt. There's so many times where you see, "Oh, this guy's a standout in camp," and then do nothing when it gets to the regular season. So as long as we aren't faltering all the way through the preseason games, then I'm going to start getting worried. Not too panicked with what happens in training camp.
Yeah, the other thing is it's good to see the defense playing well. That is a good thing to hear early. All right, this is from Ross Tucker's offensive line rankings, part of the 33rd team. Those are former players, executives, and the likes. Elite tier, they have the Eagles 1, the Lions number 2, and the Browns 3rd. Browns employed the best pair of guards in the NFL, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller. Big surprise is how well Ethan Posich played when the team moved on from J.C. Treader and lost presumptive starter Nick Harris to injury. And when you really think about it, Jack, that interior, tackles in the center, that's where you got to keep the pressure from, especially with a quarterback that is mobile. Get somebody running top speed to get to him and give him a better chance. But coming straight up the middle, if your tackle or if your guards and centers are having trouble, your offensive line's in trouble.
Yeah, it's going to, I think, come down to the health of that right side. Wyatt Teller, we've seen 2 years on the trot where the second half of the season, just seen him all-pro in conversations, start the first half of the season, and then second half of the season, it's been like league average. And there's been that significant drop-off. And Conklin has obviously had his health issues past that first season in Cleveland, which was amazing. It wasn't all-pro, I want to say, back then, but certainly up there with the discussions of the best right tackles in the league year one. So if those two stay healthy, it's easily going to be, I think, the best offensive line in the NFL. And Posich is going to be fascinating because this is a player that is a one-year wonder at the moment, but that came with the Browns, playing between the best guard tandem in the NFL with the best O-line coach in the NFL. Can he continue that? We genuinely don't know at this stage if that's something he's going to continue, but they must have seen something to part with $6 million a year to keep him around.
All right, before we go to break, this is from NFL.com. Biggest challenge for each of the NFL teams in 2023. And for the Browns, they say unlocking Deshaun Watson's full talent. Can Deshaun Watson's 2022 woes be blamed on rust, off-the-field distractions, the Browns' personnel and scheme? Perhaps it was degrees of each. But now the chore for Kevin Stefanski, whose seat will warm if he continues to lose, will be to put Watson in the best possible position to succeed and trust that he can turn the page. The fact that you're talking about unlocking Watson's potential, I think, is fair. I think a thing that's not stated there is they had to tweak the offense from Jacoby Brissett to Watson. Watson didn't have the 13 weeks to get used to his personnel, so he's in a new scheme with new personnel and has to ramp up to game speed from 0 to 60 in a week. If you were being realistic, which I wasn't, and thinking about it, he was set up to not do so well those final 6 games.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting wonders. I was expecting it to be better than it was, though. But now's the time. He's got the full off season. The roster around him is loaded. Very few quarterbacks will play on such a talented rest of the room. You might not have the freak that Mahomes has in Kelsey. There's not a weapon out there that is right top elite, top 5 weapon. Your Jamar Chase, your Kelsey, anything like that. There's not the wonder, but at the same time, there is so many weapons everywhere. Phenomenal line. That there's no excuses. And as we've spoke about before, it's going to come down to the quarterback. If Watson delivers, the rest of the team's flying. You could lose a key player like Nick Chubb and you're still going to be in Super Bowl contention if Deshaun Watson's flying. That's how important the quarterback is. And that's why they've made the risk and paid him the money. So it's his time to step up. And if we're going to go to the promised land, be playing February football, it's going to come down to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and I mean, people that don't want to say that, and they'll always point to, well, there was fill-in-the-blank quarterback. Historically, if you do not have an elite quarterback, it is very rare that you are contending for a Super Bowl. And you can point to Trent Dilfer. That was a different NFL. The rules are different.
Yeah, the game's moved on. It's like you've got to have a top 8 quarterback or you've got to have a rookie quarterback. If they're on a rookie deal, there's the exception that, hey, if you're saving $40 million a year and you can put into extra wide receiver, extra edge, extra this, extra that, then you can bridge that gap. So it's either got to be a top 8 quarterback or he's top 16 on a rookie deal. I think you can also get away with it. You think back to like the early Russell Wilson, stuff like that. Those guys, when you can spend another $40 million on the rest of your roster, that is so dramatic that it almost bridges the idea that they need to be quite as good. But one of those two. And I've always said, if you don't think your guy's top 8, keep drafting and keep trying to find it. And everything looks like in the past that he is top 8, but we just need to see it. And everything's pointing towards he can go out and deliver this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's now or never. Jack Duffin and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Jack's really good with the cap and the running back market and the left tackle market. We'll talk some dollars and cents and potential extensions moving forward. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. And one of the things Jack is really good at is the financial part of it relative to the salary cap. So take a look at this. He tweets out Browns current cap space, $16.8 million, 89 of 90 roster spots taken care of and accounted for. How the Browns' record spending is sustainable and why the other owners won't like it. And again, follow Jack on Twitter. Read his stuff. It's really good. Jack, take us through this and that spending that we've talked about. Jimmy Haslam is spending and he's allowing Andrew Berry to spend, and that's why the roster's there. How sustainable is it?
So as long as Jimmy is willing to keep opening his wallet and throwing money at it, it is entirely sustainable because they've built a model where they're constantly pushing it back. And as long as there's not another worldwide pandemic and the salary cap crashes through the floor, which is what caused a lot of problems to teams like the Saints, then there's no reason. And effectively what they're doing, they're spending almost 2 years in advance on the salary cap. But the way you load it up like a credit card, you can just afford to keep rolling, and push that down the line. So everything is trending in the right direction. Just going to rely on no worldwide catastrophes and Jimmy Haslam to keep spending. So as long as those two stay in place, can go as far as we want. And we've just looked at a 3-year average based on how much they're spending at the moment. Obviously, it gets to the end of the season, we get a full official number. But they'll have spent 3 years, $817 million. And then if we just look at the league average, $665 million. So an extra, doing some maths on the fly here, $150 million over a 3-year window is how much extra the Browns are spending, just to league average across the board. If we look at the cheapest team, the Bears, that's $544 million. So a good $300 million more than them. So significant amount of money, and now he's just going to be expecting the results. But if it's one where suddenly Jimmy Haslam spending more money, Deshaun Watson's great, the Browns are winning, owners aren't going to be happy, but there's nothing they're going to be able to do because there is no way the players' union will want teams like the Browns spending less money and giving less money to the players. They're all for ramping it up. But you look to a team like the Bengals, don't have the same spending power as the Browns. They're sat there going, can we afford to keep Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Burrow? And then Andrew Berry's standing there going, we'll pay everyone. So significant the difference it'll make. You might have the salary cap. It's not quite like baseball where there is a big difference, but there is. If your owner is willing to pay for it, you can do a lot more than everyone else.
Okay, along those lines, this is another tweet that you had. The more the running back market collapses, the higher the chances Nick Chubb remains with the Browns beyond his current deal ending, which is 2024, if he remains healthy. And you say it might be a bargain of a deal, the $12.2 million. And when you think about it, they're still going to be paying Nick Chubb among the top running backs at that dollar figure.
Yeah, so when he got that second deal in Cleveland, most players rarely get a third deal. It's just the way the NFL works. Once you're sort of 30-odd, teams don't want to then invest with a big deal. But the fact that the running back market is continuing to go down rather than up, it's weird. You thought it'd just stagnate and just sort of be steady and might not go anywhere. But the fact that it's even starting to dip is why lots of running backs are getting worried and unsure where their future is. But it then brings that discussion that a team's not going to walk around and go, hey, we'll give Nick Chubb $16 million, leave the Browns, move on. And I don't think they would have jumped up and spent more. But if it's suddenly, hey, $20 million 2-year deal, I think that's one where they could look at that and go, yeah, we'll make that commitment. They'll probably wait until he's near a free agency and look at the market, because health is going to be the issue there. In 2 years' time, approaching 30, there tends to be a drop-off with running backs once they cross 28. So as long as he remains healthy, they could give him that third deal. But the fact that the running back market continues to collapse is now a lot more in play than it ever was before.
Left tackle. So we know that Jedrick Wills, they picked up the 5th-year option, which is next year's. So he's under option for 2 years. So let's see. You took a look again. This is from your Twitter. What will it likely cost to extend Wills in Cleveland? And you arrive at the answer of $19 million. They have 2 years to decide on that deal. You look at DeJuan Jones and you see a big guy with quick feet, and can he become the left tackle under the tutelage of Bill Callahan? Take us through that and just kind of what you see with Wills.
Yeah, so if we look at, I think the same day, Andrew Thomas got paid, and that's $23.5 million a year. So a massive, massive amount of money. But teams are willing to spend just for average left tackle play. And lots of people, Jedrick Wills is an incredibly frustrating player, because you'll see moments which are phenomenal, and then you'll see moments where you're like, why? What just happened there? And obviously, it's a hard act to follow. He's following on from Joe Thomas. So the expectations of left tackle play in Cleveland are higher than probably anywhere else in the league, because we've seen not just great play, we've seen perfection for years. So he's come in, tough gig, and it's that balance between great moments to like frustrating moments, and where he then takes his step forward. But a team will go out and pay him. So the price is going to be what it will be. They've got 2 years. Will it finally click and he steps forward? But fingers crossed. Jones has got 2 years now to really develop, prove he can be the guy. But then in 2 years' time, they've got to make the decision. Do we want to pay him? And that $19 million is going to be cheaper than the franchise tag. The franchise tag is not going to be something they'll want to do, because he will be so expensive as the left tackle market continues to skyrocket. So I think it's one where they're really hoping Jones does it. But if we get to 2 years' time and Jones might step in and replace Conklin at right tackle, they might end up having to pay him for a couple of years just to bridge them over. But don't be surprised if in a year's time we're looking at their first pick in the draft, in the second round, they take a tackle and constantly keep preparing for that. So, yeah.
Before
It's an expensive position.
Yeah, the left tackle it's going up, not quite as high as quarterback or cornerback, but those three are inflating significantly. Before I let you go, what are you looking for tomorrow? None of the starters are going to play. It's the first Hall of Fame game is typically even the backups don't play a whole lot. What are you specifically looking for as to clues as to what might happen in that Hall of Fame game tomorrow night?
Yeah, so I love everything roster construction. It's the bit, along with salary cap, that I'm fascinated by. So it's just going to be the order in which lines are running out there. Sort of who's in that first team defense tomorrow? Who's the second team defense? Same with offense, because you get the unofficial depth charts done by the media team, but this is the coaching staff making a statement. They're saying, I view this defensive tackle ahead of that defensive tackle based on the order they run out there. So that stuff's really telling what the key stuff I'm looking at. I'll have the roster open in my phone because we're going to get random jersey numbers that you've probably never seen before. And it's like, who's that guy? So that'll be keeping an eye on. And then the other one, because people look at the offense and defense, probably more telling than those two, is the special teams unit. Because Bubba Ventrone will have a big say on the 52nd, 53rd, even sort of everything 45 onwards. Bubba Ventrone, special teams, is going to be a big factor in who makes that final roster. So first team, punting, both punting, returning, and receiving, that is going to be telling for who's out there, who's the gunners, things like that. So do keep an eye on that. It's usually a really, really good tell in the preseason.
Jack Duffin, Orange and Brown Report, as always, great stuff. Thank you so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Jack.
Have a great day.
All right, Jack Duffin, make sure you read him, Orange and Brown Report. Follow him on Twitter. You heard always really good stuff with the Browns. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Jeff Risdon joins us. We continue talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, I've been a huge Browns fan for years. I'm going to my first Browns game in a long time. But anyway, my question is, how do you think Deshaun Watson will lead us to a Super Bowl? Because the city's been dying for one. And what will it take for us to finally win the AFC North and finally be champions? Have a great day, and go Browns!
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jeff Risdon from DraftWire.com. Jeff, if Watson, I've said this a couple of times, If Watson is, 10 to 15 range, they're contenders for the division, assuming the defense does what we think it does, play well. If he's up in that 5 to 7, they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders, assuming, again, that defense does what we expect. I expect that defense to be good, significantly better.
I'm with you on that. And I do think that Deshaun, there's a lot certainly on his shoulders, and he's got to show more than he did last year. I think we all agree that he will, with a full off season, with acclimation, with less all that going on around him. I covered him in Houston when he was with the Texans, and I saw Deshaun Watson elevate the play of guys around him in ways that we have not seen in Cleveland in a very long time on the football field. And I think his ability to make guys better is a wild card that I don't think we can account for. And if he's able to coax the number 3 tight end, the number 4 wide receiver into being better than what we anticipate them to be or how they look on paper, I think you're looking at a team that has a very good chance of winning the AFC North. Now, there's obviously the other teams. It's a brutal division. There's no doubt about that. I think, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, they all have their vulnerabilities, but they're also all very good teams, and it's not going to be easy. I think the biggest thing is going to be consistency. Are we going to get the same A level from the Browns and Deshaun, from week 1 to week 18? Or are there going to be weeks where maybe you only get his B or his C, or the defense only brings, its B or C game or effort? I'm not really worried about the effort. I'm more worried about the execution. But if that happens, then they're going to be fighting for that wild card and fighting to get into the playoffs and right around that 8-9 win range. And I think we all want more than that.
Yeah. All right. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, has seen a lot. He was on ESPN Cleveland today talking about what he has seen from the Browns' rookie wide receiver, Cedric Tillman.
I think he looks real good. I mean, you could tell he's one of the biggest receivers out there. I see him making a lot of catches. He's coming in with usually these last 2 quarterbacks. He's getting his most reps then. He's on his way. I don't know how soon he's going to contribute, but I think he's going to contribute as a rookie. Let's put it this way. He looks a lot. He was a 3rd-round pick. David Bell was a 3rd-round pick. He looks a lot better than Bell did at this point last year.
And Jeff, Bell looked pretty good, and then kind of had the injury, and that kind of threw everything back. But you can't. Every day you're seeing him make plays in scramble situations, being Tillman.
And that's what he was good at Tennessee. And I think that ability to work with an improvisational type of quarterback, and he worked with Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, a guy who could make things happen outside the pocket when the initial play broke down. Deshaun Watson's fantastic at that. That's probably when Deshaun is at his best. And to have a receiver who's accustomed to that, rather than like David Bell. David Bell's a fine receiver, and I still have hope for David Bell, but he's a very different kind of guy. He came from a structured system at Purdue where he had to be at the spot at this exact time. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to work for him. Like Tillman can flow a little bit and improvise a little bit. And I think that's something that he brings to the offense that they haven't seen. He's also big, and I think the size and the speed that he has. One of the best plays that he made in college football in his college career. Tennessee game against Kentucky last year. Dead sprint down the right sideline. He had to fully extend for the ball and was able to catch it, keep both feet in bounds. Remember, you only need one in college. He got both feet in, kept the ball through the process of the catch, which is much more rigorous in the NFL than it is in college. And those are the kind of plays that Amari Cooper can make those, but we haven't seen anybody else in Cleveland be able to make that kind of play. And if he can give any sort of balance to Amari on the other side, Deshaun's going to have a field day.
So this is from CBS Sports. Top 30 players over 30 years old. Number 1, Travis Kelce. Number 2, Aaron Donald. Devontae Adams is number 3. The Browns' Joel Bitonio checks in at 9. Interior linemen don't always get the love they deserve, but Bitonio's prime example. Despite playing for mediocre Browns, he's had 5 straight all-pro seasons, powering Nick Chubb's effortless rushing. You know what? It's nice to see Joel Bitonio finally get some of this national. People that have watched the Browns closely, it was kind of like Joe Thomas. It was like, that guy can play. I know, and it's the same thing with Bitonio. That guy can play.
100%. And he's been here a long time. And I actually think that he was a little bit better, like the couple seasons before he got his first All-Pro than he was in his first All-Pro year. But I'm not gonna split hairs on that. He's really good. It's kind of shocking to me that some of those names that you list off are over 30. Bitonio included. I mean, I know he's been around for a decade, but it doesn't feel like he's been here that long. It seems like 2017, 2018 was like when he really first started hitting the stride, but he was here 4 or 5 years before that. It's a great testament to Bitonio. He has been so good for so long, and the way he goes about his business is he's not a guy that attracts attention. Like, he's an interior lineman, like they said. He's not a guy that's going to attract a lot of attention or get a lot of publicity. He's just really dang good at what he does, and he's good at everything that he does. Like there are some guys that are a pass blocking specialist or a run blocking specialist. He's the full package, man. He's a very, very good player. It's great to see him get the recognition. We know him well enough to know that he's not a guy that's going to seek that, but he's also not going to be a guy that's going to shy away from embracing that and appreciate all the kind words. And it's neat to see him getting it. And remember, look, go back a few years when Wyatt Teller first got here. Wyatt Teller got all the notoriety when I think we all knew that Joel Bitonio was pretty dang good in his own right and was probably the better player at that point. Nice to have the interior guard combination that the Browns have, and you want to see that line continue to grow. And he's a bedrock, man. It's great to see him get the recognition.
Jeff Risdon from DraftWire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, former NFL GM talks about the AFC North and who will finish first, who will finish last. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from DraftWire.com. A former Jets general manager, Mike Tannenbaum, longtime NFL executive, was on Get Up debating the AFC North and who is going to finish first, who's going to finish last.
Are you buying that the Steelers will finish last in the AFC North?
I am, and not necessarily as much as I'm against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and obviously they have a legendary coach in Mike Tomlin. But when you look at the three other quarterbacks, I think Deshaun Watson is going to play markedly better this year. I think Cleveland has a little bit of an underrated roster. And then the other two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, to me, will be in the thick of the MVP discussion because of having players like Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers, who they took in the first round, and obviously you have Joe Burrow that's led the Bengals to back-to-back AFC Championship games. So to me, I just don't think Pittsburgh will be able to score consistently with those other three teams, despite having some really good weapons in Pickens and Deontay Johnson. I just don't think Kenny Pickett is anywhere close to those other three quarterbacks.
And Jeff, I agree with Mike. I can't believe I'm saying this. I really agree with Mike Tannenbaum, and I usually don't.
I feel the same way. It's odd because he tends to be a provocateur as an ex-GM, but he's right. And look, the Pittsburgh offense, they have weapons, but do we trust Kenny Pickett to be able to use all those weapons, to utilize them all? Do we really believe that offensive line is going to go from as abysmal as it has been to being that much better that quickly? Like, I don't doubt that they're going to be better, but I'm not sure that they're ready for the prime time and the improvement along the lines, or the lines, with Baltimore got better, I think, on their defensive front. I think Cleveland got better on their defensive front. Cincinnati, okay, they're solid enough, The line play, I think, is where specifically the offensive line, is where you're going to worry about Pittsburgh. And can they keep Pickett, who wasn't necessarily a guy who handled pressure all that well? I don't know about like it's tough. It's tough to say that Mike Tomlin's is going to come in last. So he said something about Baltimore there, about how much they're counting on Odell Beckham Jr. to be their alpha dog receiver. We've seen that movie before, Dave.
Yeah,
we've seen that movie. It doesn't always have a happy ending.
No, and you know, he's got the talent but the production doesn't ever seem to match what you expect it to be. I like the guy. I like the guy a lot.
Same here. But it's tough to trust him after all that he's been through. I wish him well, but not too well on the 2 Sundays where he's playing in Cleveland either.
I'm with you. All right, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 players that can't be lost to injury in 2023 for the Browns. They say 3, Amari Cooper, wide receiver. Number 2, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And number 1, Myles Garrett. I get the Cooper one just because you've got some unproven guys. I think they're more equipped to handle Myles Garrett this year than they would have been in the past. Having said that, I get it. You don't want that guy that could be up to 20, 22 sacks this year, missing any time.
I expect Myles Garrett to be firmly in the running for Defensive Player of the Year and potentially an MVP type. I think the additions that they made, getting Zadarius Smith, getting Agbo Okoronkwo, getting a better interior presence with a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson next to him, that's unlocking a big key there. They are built around the defense, especially the front, is built around him being Myles. I don't know if you can replace that with like I like Zadarius Smith a whole lot. I really do. You can't ask him to do what Myles Garrett does. He is the difference maker, and I do think that he deserves to be number 1 on that list. I would say I'm not a huge fan of the backup quarterback situation. Like, can we live without Deshaun? I don't know, man. And Nick Chubb, again, the running back depth isn't as good as it used to be. I do think that I think they needed to de-emphasize the importance of the depth, but Nick Chubb is the straw that stirs that drink as well. And I would put him up there over Jay. Nothing against JOK. He's obviously a very important player, but I'd put a couple of other names up there over him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Jerome Ford. I don't know that I like him as my main back if we're counting on this being a playoff year. And I think he can play. I think he's a really good NFL running back. I just don't know that if I'm expecting to go to the playoffs, I don't know that I'm ready to say, all right, let's give him the ball 18, 20 times. This is from the Bleacher Report. This is also very interesting. So, ranking NFL coordinators who have the biggest impact on the 2023 season. They say number 1, Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator for the Chargers. Number 2, Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator of Patriots. Vic Fangio, defensive coordinator, Dolphins. They got Monken, offensive coordinator for the Ravens at 4. They say Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator for the Browns, is 9. The Browns were not a good defensive football team in 2022, and that might be an understatement. A respectable 14th in yards allowed, but 20th in points allowed, 25th against the run. For the Browns to contend in a loaded AFC North, the defensive improvement is going to have to translate on Sundays. I will be very surprised if it doesn't. And this is one thing, and we'll get a little bit more into some of the Hall of Fame stuff next segment. I want to see that defense because you're not going to hide the style of defense that you're going to play. You're not going to have Myles Garrett or any of those guys, but they're going to play the wide 9 and they're going to get after whomever takes the ball from center.
They are, and pressure is the number 1 key to what Jim Schwartz is trying to do with this defense. You're going to see him. They're going to come up with. He is the master, and I saw this when he coached in Detroit. The asynchronous pass rush, which is not something that we've seen in Cleveland in a while. That's where the defensive end will deliberately keep for account to let the tackle effectively take himself out of the play. Jim Schwartz loves coaching that and loves using it. It's very difficult to defend against as an offensive tackle. You're going to see Myles Garrett, you're going to see Zadarius Smith doing these things. The biggest key for me, the Cleveland Browns were 32nd in the league in stopping the run on first downs last year. When teams ran the ball against them on 1st and 10, they gained an average of 5.26 yards per carry. That's the worst in the league. They were one of 4 teams that were over 5 yards per carry on first downs allowed. You want to get better? Stop them on first down so it's not 2nd and 4. Make it 2nd and 8. Make it 3rd and 9. Get into more of those situations where that pass rush can pin its ears back and go get you. That's what Jim Schwartz is all about. He has his foibles. The wide 9 is vulnerable to inside-outside runners. It's very vulnerable, unfortunately, to running quarterbacks, and that's a problem when you got Lamar Jackson on the roster on the schedule a couple times a year. But maybe that's why JOK is so important. To go back to the last question, I think you're going to see Schwartz be very important. I championed him. I remember coming on the show. I think it was actually the last time I was on. It was right after he was hired. I was very bullish on it. I still am. I do want to see it tighten the screws just a little bit, but I think he's going to be critically important to what goes on. Look, and the biggest thing that you're going to see, Joe Woods. I don't want to beat that dead horse. He was not a guy who emotionally fired up his players. Jim Schwartz is a guy, he's going to be in his players' faces if they're not executing. And while that can be uncomfortable and not always appropriate, I think it's something that Cleveland desperately needed. They needed that passion, that fiery leadership that it can inspire guys to go above and beyond where they've played in the past. And I think that's something that's going to be very critical, and that's something that Jim Schwartz brings. And I'm excited to see it.
Jeff Risdon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Jim Schwartz about some of the leadership the Browns defense has shown. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from DraftWire.com. Jim Schwartz met with the media yesterday, talked about the leadership that has been shown on the defensive side of the ball early in training camp so far by Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett on the defensive line.
I'd add Dalvin in there too. Been an outstanding leader for us, and I think those guys that have operated at a high level of success in the NFL, it becomes paying it forward a little bit. I've been very pleased with those guys. I've been pleased with their tempo of practice. They're, everything about it. They've, anytime you sign a free agent, anytime you give a guy a contract and things like that, you're telling the rest of the guys in the locker room, hey, this is what we're all about right here, right? And those guys have a responsibility to that. It's a Spider-Man with great. See, all you Marvel people, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, with a big contract comes great responsibility. It's not just about the play; it's about all those stuff. And I like those guys. Those guys have all done it in their own way. Each guy is a little bit different, but when you talk about the D line, you talk about the group, and it's a little bit like an offensive line. It's not an individual, position. One guy might flush the quarterback, another guy makes the sack. One guy might execute a game perfectly to free up another guy. It's a group. It's a mentality of all for one, one for all, and those guys are leading the way with that.
Jeff, there's so much stuff in there that was good. The thing that I like is he's letting he doesn't expect guys to not be themselves. Be themselves, be leaders. But the thing about the contract, you can be sure that is it's a constant. We gave you that because we believe it. You know what I mean? And it's not, boy, you better go out and do this. It's like, we believe in you. You know, don't make us look silly.
Yeah. And I like that he highlighted that there is responsibility that comes with that salary. You're going to be expected to be more of a leadership presence. I think that's something that we've all quietly muttered under our breath a little bit about Miles over the years. Like, a fantastic player, no doubt about it. And he's his own dude. And look, we love him being who he is. We absolutely do. But could he maybe take on a little bit more leadership responsibility and accountability for the entire defense? I think he's done a good job of that, but I think he can do a better job of that. I think that's something that Jim Schwartz is saying there, and he's seeing it. And I like that very much. I love the fact that they brought in veterans from other successful organizations that have had that sort of, ebb and flow and over time. Tomlinson's a great example of that. This guy has bounced around. Every team he's been at has been really good on defense at what they do. And I think he's the kind of guy that can help, along and maybe put his arm around Miles from time to time and like, hey man, you might need to say something here. I don't think Miles has ever had that. And I think that speaks to what Jim Schwartz is talking about here. Look, I've seen teams where the highest paid player, where a Hall of Fame player wasn't a natural leader, and it's a problem. I'm not saying that about Miles, but I'm saying that there is more that he can do with that. And I think that Jim Schwartz highlighted right there how he can do it, and that he is in fact doing it, and that Miles himself sees it. And I think that's a huge step forward for this defense, because it's awkward when your alpha dog best player isn't necessarily your alpha dog leader. And I think Miles is embracing that more. And we've heard reports out of camp that he's definitely doing more of that. And that's nothing but a positive thing.
Well, and Schwartz is making it clear, be yourself, but you're good. You're really good. Make sure you share what you know with the younger guys. So Browns will play in the Hall of Fame game tomorrow. Friday will be the Gold Jacket ceremony. That's when the Hall of Famers get called up. Everybody goes crazy at the Civic Center down in Canton, and they get their gold jacket. I've often wondered, how do they know that the jacket fits? Well, Joe Thomas is getting his gold jacket. Take a look at Joe Thomas getting to size up his gold jacket.
Do you guys think it's going to fit?
No. Mom, it's not going to fit.
Well, cool. It's got a cool box.
Ooh.
Ooh. Oh my goodness.
So big.
Oh, it's got your number.
Oh, that's cool.
It says 63. 19.
Oh, no.
I think 1963.
I thought it said 369.
Established. First year of the Hall of Fame.
You should keep this box.
Probably.
Oh, I think I want to see it.
Here you go. Somebody read my letter. Somebody that can read. Whoa, that's cool.
Oh, that's really cool.
That is pretty neat. All right. Let's see if it fits.
Hey, Lola. Turn off the car. Just the push button. Just press it.
Whoa, Reese-Roo. Woo.
Joe Thomas and his daughters and his wife. It's a cool moment. It's first time in a long time that a Brown will enter the Hall of Fame. Thought this, which Browns do you think are on track that are potential Hall of Famers moving forward?
Miles is certainly in the conversation. He's already in the top 90 all-time in career sacks. He has more sacks after 6 seasons than a whole lot of dudes who are in the Hall of Fame already. So he's certainly trending in the right direction. Nick Chubb, if he continues to churn out yards the way he is, and I think one of the things that the voters have focused on more is consistency of productivity. Like, if you're going to be a long-term guy, you better do it really, really well. For a guy like Curtis Martin got in. Chubb is on that path, and he has a higher career yards per carry average than Curtis Martin does. So I think he's got a shot. And we brought up earlier, Joel Bitonio. 5 straight All-Pros. That's not nothing. That's in an era where there's some really, like Quentin Nelson in Indianapolis, fantastic guard. Zach Martin down in Dallas. Like, there's some really, really good interior offensive linemen, and Joel Bitonio has been in that top tier, in that breadth for a long time. He has another couple seasons like that. He's not going to be one of those guys that gets in like Joe on the first ballot, but maybe 15, 16 years into his eligibility, when they're cleaning out and they're like, we don't have to put an offensive lineman in a couple of years. Why not Joel Bitonio? I think that's his ticket to getting in 2045, whenever. There's no sign of this guy slowing down. He can play for a very long time. It would be fun to see him get in, because, like we talked about earlier, he doesn't get celebrated nearly enough, and I would love to see that. He's got to turn in a couple more years, because if you're going to be a Hall of Famer as an interior offensive lineman, you got to have like 7, 8, 9 All-Pro years. He's on his way.
Yeah, those were the three that came to mind for me as well, and I'm with you. Each of them have to do it another 3, 4, maybe 5 years, and then we can talk about another Brown going into the Hall of Fame. Jeff Risdon, DraftWire.com, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jeff.
My pleasure being with you. Thank you.
Jeff Risdon, DraftWire.com. Check him out. Really good stuff about the guys coming out, as well as NFL players. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.